Welcome to the book of Shmuel, chapter 18, the great comeback and the end of the coup. Yes, you knew it. I know Avshalom was very successful, and I know that that was a very successful coup, but you can count on King David to make a great comeback, and indeed, that is exactly what he does. So, chapter 18, David is now ready. He starts strategizing. He's across the Jordan, which is relatively safe from any surprise attacks, and he's ready now to start making a comeback. David starts appointing an army, structuring an army, and it says, interestingly, that he appoints Sarei Me'ot and Sarei Alafim, which is people who are in charge of hundreds of soldiers and people who are in charge of thousands of soldiers, which means he has thousands of soldiers. And he divides them into three groups. One group has Yoav in charge of it. The next has Avishai ben Surya, brother of Yoav. And lastly is with Itai Hagiti, the loyal person who came with him right after Avshalom overthrew him. And so he has these three groups and they're all ready to go. Now David is like, I'm going to join the army. But the people with him are like, wait a minute. You know, with us, if someone dies, it's not going to change the whole battle. But if you, King David, die in this battle, the whole battle is about keeping you king and preventing Avshalom from being king. So it's not a great idea to have you, the one who's going to be fighting with us. Like the whole point is to literally to protect you. That's the point. So the people actually succeed in getting David HaMelech not to go with them to war, and so they go tens and hundreds and thousands of soldiers of David go and fight. And now, interestingly, you'd think David HaMelech is escaping from his son Avshalom, and so Avshalom is basically the enemy. He's literally trying to kill David. So you would think that David might want to fight him very ferociously, but you have to remember Avshalom is David's son. He's his own son. And so at a very touching moment, David says to Yoav and Avishai and to Itai, he says, Le'at li lanar Avshalom. Easy on the boy Avshalom. Make sure that you are not too violent, basically that you don't take the life of Avshalom, and everybody hears that. Indeed, they go out to war, and it's a very, very, very difficult war. It says that the people of Israel fell before the people of David, 20,000 people. So 20,000 people from Israel. And interestingly, because it was such difficult conditions, it says that it was in a forest. I'm not sure exactly which forest, but it says there were more people killed by the conditions, by the terrain, by the forest, then were killed by sword. It says, "Vayarev hayar lechol ba'am masher achla acherev." There were more people being killed by the forest conditions than were killed by the sword. So you have to understand that this was in a terrain that was very, very heavy with trees, etc. Maybe along the Jordan River in a place where it's just so filled with greenery. And so happens to be by chance Avshalom turns up right before the servants of David. And Avshalom is riding a mule. As he's coming, he's riding a mule. But guess what? As Avshalom is riding the mule, remember when it described Avshalom to us in his early childhood, it said he's very beautiful. And it says that every year he would cut his hair. There was so much hair, it weighed 200 shekel weights. And so Avshalom's hair, which is so beautiful and so iconic to him, ends up serving against him. As Avshalom is riding under the elah tree, his hair gets stuck in the tree and the mule continues riding. What a scene. Just imagine that. Avshalom is riding a mule very quickly. He passes right in front of the sons before the servants of David, and as he's passing, his whole hair gets stuck in the branches of the tree. The mule continues, and Avshalom remains hanging from the tree. And it says, Vayutan ben shamayim va'aretz. Maybe it was on the side of a hill, and he's like coming off a cliff. He's between the shamayim and eretz. He's hanging literally from his hair above the ground with no way to get off the ground. And someone comes over to Yoav and says, have you seen that insane scene of Avshalom dangling by his hair from a tree? And Yoav says, excuse me? You saw that and you didn't take the life of our enemy Avshalom. And the man says to Avshalom, says to Avishai, to Yoav. The man says, are you kidding me? If you gave me 1,000 pieces of silver, I would not take the life of Avshalom, because literally the king says, don't do that. I will not, I don't have the courage or the willingness to do that. And so Avishai and Yoav and Itai are sitting there, and they're like, okay, who's going to take the life of Avshalom? And so there's like back and forth. And finally, Yoav is like, you know what? I'm not going to continue begging. He takes a sword that has 3 spears, sort of like a pitchfork, and he puts it in the heart of Avshalom while Avshalom is dangling from the tree. And then 10 assistants of Yoav take their swords, and they also put those in Avshalom. Basically, Avshalom is no longer among us. And so Yoav blows the shofar and says, stop chasing the people of Israel. I don't want any more people to die for no need. And so Yoav takes the body of Avshalom. He puts on it rocks, and there's this kind of pile of rocks. But interestingly, it says that Avshalom made for himself already this huge monument of a grave because he had no children, and he called it Yad Avshalom. In fact, if you go now to Jerusalem, if you go east of the Western Wall, east of the Temple Mount, you will see a valley between Temple Mount and the Mount of Olives. And there you have this huge monument, and it's called Yad Avshalom. It's believed to be the place where Avshalom is buried to this day. Now, Achimaatz, the son of Tzadok HaKohen, is like, you know what? Let me bring the good news to the king. We won! Yay! And Yoav says, you think the king's going to be happy with your news? You think the fact that we took the life of his son is going to make him happy? No. So he turns to the servant, the servant that is with him, and he says to him, go tell the king. And he goes and he says, okay, I'm going to go tell the king. But then Achimaatz, the son of Tzadok, is so eager to deliver the news, he says, I'm also going to run, and I'm also going to tell. So he runs very quickly, and he bypasses the other person, the servant, and David is sitting between 2 gates, and he's looking to see maybe someone's coming with the news. And so the watchman that's standing on the tower says, hey, someone's coming, and David says, look, if he's coming alone, then that's good news. And so he comes closer and closer, and the watchman opens the gate, and he says he must have good news. But suddenly he says, oh wait, I see someone running, and it looks like Achimaatz, who runs very beautifully. And so the king says, you know what, if it's Achimaatz, he must be bringing good news. Achimaatz comes to the king, he says, hello, how are you? And he says to the king, thank God you have been delivered. Hashem has taken your enemies and taken their lives, and all those who sought to fight and rebel against you are gone. They're all done. And King David first says right away, how is my son Avshalom doing? And so he says, unfortunately, it seems like everyone took his life. And so then suddenly the other servant comes, and he says, oh, God has delivered you from all your people. And then David asks, but what about Avshalom? And the servant says, well, may all your enemies be like Avshalom, basically implying that Avshalom indeed is no longer alive. So that's really the end of the coup. We're going to see more of the fallout until David returns to Jerusalem in the next chapter. That has been Perek Yud Chet, where we see the war between the people of David, the people of Avshalom, David taking his thousands of people, fighting against the 20,000 of Bnei Yisrael, more than 20,000 of Bnei Yisrael fall, and they win them. Avshalom goes with his hair, gets stuck in a tree, and no one really wants to take his life until Yoav does it himself. No one wants to deliver that news to David until Achimaatz ben Tzadok and the other servant make sure that they do it in joy.